You know that feeling when you want to really understand something important, but just thinking about digging through all those research papers,
Yeah,
it can be a bit overwhelming.
yeah,
You just want the key insights, right? The stuff that really matters, without having to wade through all the jargon. Well,
exactly.
that's where we come in.
Right.
We've done the heavy lifting for you, and today we are diving deep into something that affects so many young people.
Writing motivation.
Yeah, writing motivation. In school-age children, we're talking first grade all the way through 12th grade.
First through 12. Yep.
Huge span of development there.
Huge. Yep.
We've got this fascinating review of research. It was published between 2000 and 2018. You can kind of think of it as a shortcut to understanding this whole field of research. It pulls together the findings from 82 different studies.
Wow.
I know, right? Involving over 28,000 students.
That's a lot of data.
It is a lot of data. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack what makes these young people want to write or what holds them back.
And this isn't just about getting good grades. As you know, writing is such a fundamental 21st century skill.
Absolutely.
It's crucial for learning across subjects, for future employment, and even just participating fully in society. And unfortunately, this review points out a lot of students struggle with both the skills of writing and the motivation to actually do it.
They do. And to try to make sense of all this research for you, we're going to focus on 5 key areas that this review explored. First, how is this thing called writing motivation even defined?
Hmm.
What are researchers actually looking at when they study it? Then we'll look at whether there are differences in motivation between boys and girls, and also how motivation might change as students move through those different grade levels.
Yeah, after that, we'll dig into the big question. Does how motivated a student is actually have an impact on how what they write?
Right. It seems kind of intuitive, but it's important for us to look at what the research actually says. Then we'll get practical and see what kinds of teaching methods have been shown to actually boost writing motivation.
Love it.
And finally, in our increasingly digital world, we'll explore the role that digital tools play in motivating kids to write.
A lot to cover.
It is a lot to cover.
So much good stuff.
So, how is writing motivation defined by researchers?
Well, at its core, motivation is generally seen as the process that gets a goal-directed activity started
Ooh,
and keeps it going. It's not just one thing, it's a whole mix of emotions, needs, beliefs, values, desires, and goals all playing a part. You can think of it as what really energizes and directs your writing.
right, kind of like a recipe. It's
Yeah,
got all these different ingredients that combine to create the final dish.
exactly.
And when it comes to writing, which is this complex thing
So complex.
involving all these different mental processes,
Yeah.
it makes sense that motivation would be such a big factor.
Mm.
This review even mentions that to write successfully, you need this exquisite balance.
That's such a good phrase, right? I know. It's like exquisite balance of these cognitive and motivational conditions. You can't write if you don't know something, and you probably can't write if you don't have some drive to do it.
Precisely. And this review really highlights a useful framework for understanding writing motivation. It's called the Writer Within Community Model, or the WWC model,
WWC.
developed by Graham, and this model emphasizes that a student's motivation isn't just internal to them, it's also shaped by the writing communities that they're a part of, like their classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and their own individual characteristics as a writer, so it's a combination of the inner and the outer.
Okay, so it's not just about the kids sitting there alone with their blank page.
Right.
It's also about the classroom environment, their peers, and how writing is seen and valued in their world.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
If you're trying to really understand a young writer's drive. Yeah, and within this model, this WWC model, Graham identifies 7 key sets of motivational beliefs. These are the things that writers believe about writing that really influence whether they want to do it, whether they're motivated.
Okay, lay them on us. What are these 7 belief sets?
Okay, so first, you have the value and the utility of writing. And this isn't just about whether they think writing is important in general, but also, do they enjoy it personally? How does it connect to their future goals, like getting into a good college or a certain career? And even what they feel they have to give up to write, like the cost in terms of their time and effort.
That cost factor is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like if a student feels that writing is taking time away from something that they'd rather be doing, that's going to impact their motivation.
Absolutely. The second one is the liking or attractiveness of writing. Do they find writing appealing? Do they have positive attitudes toward it? Or maybe towards certain types of writing, like creative stories versus persuasive essays. They might even have an interest in writing under specific circumstances, like if it's about a topic they love.
If it feels like a chore, like, ugh, I have to write this essay, that internal spark of motivation is going to be tough to ignite.
For sure. Third, we have beliefs about writing competence, which includes their self-efficacy, how confident they are in their ability to write successfully.
So self-efficacy is that inner belief, I can do this, I can write well.
Exactly. It also touches on their implicit theories, whether they see writing ability as something they can improve with practice, or as this fixed trait, something they're born with, and that's it.
That idea of malleable versus static skill belief,
Yes.
that's powerful.
Yeah.
If you believe that you can get better at writing,
Right.
you're probably more likely to put in the effort.
Absolutely. Fourth, we have the reasons for writing. This looks at whether their motivation is intrinsic, meaning it comes from inner satisfaction, like the joy of expressing themselves, or extrinsic, meaning driven by external rewards, like getting good grades or avoiding punishment. It also considers their achievement goals. Are they writing to learn something new? That's called mastery goals, to look good compared to others, performance approach goals, or to avoid looking incompetent, which is performance avoidance goals.
So are they writing because they genuinely want to explore an idea? Or are they writing because they want to get a good grade? Big difference in the kind of motivation there.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
The fifth one is about explanations for success or failure.
Yeah.
This is about what they credit their successes and their failures in writing to, something about them personally, locus of control, something they feel they can influence, controllability, something that's stable and unlikely to change, or something that's more temporary.
If a student thinks they failed a writing assignment because they're just bad at writing, and that's it, that's a stable, internal, and feels uncontrollable attribution.
Totally.
That's going to be a real motivation killer.
For sure. Sixth is their writer identities. How do they see themselves as writers? Do they even identify as a writer?
That sense of identity has got to be important to foster. If someone doesn't see themselves as a writer, they're less likely to be invested in improving.
Absolutely. And then finally, the seventh one is their beliefs about writing communities. So this encompasses their views on the values, the purposes, the audiences, and the actions of the writing communities that they're involved in, whether that's their classroom, a writing club, or even like online writing groups.
So do they feel like their writing is valued by their teacher, their classmates? Do they see a real purpose for it beyond just like the assignment requirements?
Yes.
These are key things to think about in shaping a young writer's community.
Exactly. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Even with this very detailed model, the review found that across those 82 studies, there were 24 different motivation-related concepts that were being investigated.
24.
Wow.
But in almost half of those cases, 46% to be exact, these concepts were either unclearly defined or not defined at all in the research itself.
Wow. So it's like trying to follow a recipe where half the ingredients aren't even listed properly.
Right.
It makes you wonder how researchers could even compare their findings effectively.
Well, that's the thing. The review points out that the most frequently studied concepts were self-efficacy, that belief in your ability to write, attitudes towards writing, and just general motivation. But even then, the way those concepts were measured and understood varied quite a bit across studies.
So it's a very complex landscape with lots of different terms being thrown around, not always with clear, consistent definitions, and that definitely sets the stage for why understanding writing motivation can feel a bit fuzzy at times.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you have a sense of how researchers are thinking about and defining writing motivation.
Right.
Let's move on to our second area, gender differences. What did the research reveal there? Well, one overall finding that's quite consistent is that girls tend to be more motivated to write than boys. This was seen across a number of those motivational constructs that we just talked about.
Okay. So that's a pretty broad statement. Let's dig into some specifics. What aspects of motivation showed this difference?
Okay, so looking at self-efficacy, for example, 4 studies found that girls reported feeling more confident in their writing abilities, including their ability to self-regulate, to manage their own writing process, like planning and revising. One of these studies even broke it down further. They found that girls reported having stronger past successes in writing, more positive encouragement from others, more positive role models, and fewer negative emotional responses when it came to writing.
So that sounds like girls have a comprehensive set of advantages in terms of writing confidence.
It does seem that way.
Maybe building boys' confidence in their writing is an area to focus on.
That's something to think about. But 4 other studies found no significant gender differences in self-efficacy. So the findings aren't completely universal, but the trend does lean toward girls feeling more confident.
Okay, so it's not 100%, but it's something to consider. What about attitudes toward writing?
Ah, yeah.
How do students feel about writing? That seems really closely linked to motivation.
You're right, and the findings there were even more consistent. Pretty much all of the studies that looked at attitudes found that girls had more positive feelings about writing than boys. And get this, one study had this striking result. The girls with the most negative attitudes towards writing still outperformed boys with the most positive attitude.
Wow, that's really powerful. It really suggests that there might be other things going on beyond just how much students say they like writing.
Exactly, yeah. Moving on to the self-concept, their sense of self-worth as a writer, a couple of studies indicated that girls had a stronger, more positive self-concept in this area. However, one interesting study found that this advantage actually disappeared after a blogging intervention.
Hmm. So that context of writing might influence these more deeply held beliefs about themselves
Right.
as writers.
Interesting. When it comes to achievement goals, the research showed that girls more often adopted learning-focused goals, wanting to really understand and improve their writing, while boys tended to lean more towards performance-based goals, wanting to appear competent or to avoid looking incompetent.
So girls might be more focused on the process of learning and getting better at writing, while boys might be more focused on the outcome, how their writing is perceived by others. That's a subtle but important distinction.
That is a good way to put it. And in terms of autonomous motivation, writing because you find it satisfying or valuable in itself, girls tended to report this more often than boys. Boys, on the other hand, were sometimes found to be more driven by external pressures. That's called controlled motivation.
Okay, so again, that aligns with this idea that girls might be more intrinsically driven to write for the joy of it. What about how much they value writing or how interested they are in it?
Several studies showed that girls often saw more worth in writing and were more interested in it compared to boys.
So across a lot of different aspects of writing motivation, it seems like girls have an edge. But the review also touched on something really interesting about gender stereotypic beliefs. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this was a fascinating finding from one particular study. Researchers looked at how strongly students identified with characteristics that are typically associated with being feminine and masculine in American society. When they took these femininity orientation beliefs into account, those gender differences we saw in self-efficacy, self-concept, value, and mastery goals became less significant or even disappeared completely.
So it's not necessarily about being a boy or girl biologically, but more about the beliefs and traits they associate with their gender. That's an important nuance.
That's the suggestion, yes. The authors of that study conclude that in writing, it seems like having a more feminine orientation in terms of embracing those stereotypical feminine traits might actually be more beneficial or at least play a significant role in motivation.
Wow, that is food for thought. It suggests that those societal beliefs might be a really important factor in these gender differences that we see in writing motivation. Okay, so we've seen some interesting patterns with gender. What about how motivation changes as students progress through those grades? That was our third area for us to explore.
Yeah, this is where the picture gets a lot more mixed,
Okay.
sometimes even contradictory. Unlike the relatively consistent findings with gender, there isn't a clear single trend for how writing motivation evolves across grade levels.
Mixed how? Give some examples of what the research showed.
Well, some studies suggested that younger students, particularly those in elementary school, might have an edge in certain areas.
Okay.
For example, some research indicated that self-efficacy, that feeling of confidence in your writing ability, tends to actually decrease from elementary to middle school. Similarly, the focus on mastery goals, that desire to learn and improve your writing for the sake of learning, also seemed to drop off as students moved from elementary to middle school, at least in some studies.
That's a bit concerning. You would hope that as they got more experience with writing, their confidence and that desire to learn would increase, not decrease.
Exactly. And this trend of younger students having an advantage was also seen in how much they valued writing, their positive feelings toward it, and their belief that writing ability can improve, that malleable skill belief that we talked about earlier.
So it sounds like for some aspects of motivation, that initial enthusiasm might wane a little bit as they get older.
That's one interpretation. However, other studies kind of paint a different picture. Some research suggested that self-efficacy actually grows over the years, so older students are feeling more confident in their writing.
So you've got some studies saying confidence dips in middle school, Others are saying it increases overall with age. That is contradictory.
It is. And to add to that complexity, some studies found no significant differences across grade levels for aspects like general attitudes towards writing, intrinsic motivation, and those beliefs about whether writing ability is fixed or can be improved.
So for some key motivational factors, it seems like age doesn't necessarily make a big difference,
Yeah.
at least according to some of this research.
Precisely. The review really emphasizes that there isn't a single clear trajectory for how writing motivation changes as students go through school.
Right.
It likely depends on the specific aspect of motivation that you're looking at, the individual student, and perhaps even the school environment that they're in.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked at definitions, gender differences, and how motivation changes with grade level.
Yeah.
Now for the big one, does motivation actually have an impact on how well students write?
The overwhelming trend is a resounding yes.
Okay, good.
The research strongly suggests that higher motivation is generally linked to better writing, and this was actually one of the more consistent findings in the review.
It does seem intuitive,
Right.
but it's good to see the research back it up. How was that connection measured in the studies that you looked at?
Well, in a variety of ways. They looked at self-reports from students about their motivation levels, teacher reports on student motivation, and then different measures of writing performance, such as the overall quality of their written work, how much they wrote in terms of length, even more granular measures like the number of correct word sequences they used.
Okay, so a real mix of how they feel about writing and how their actual writing is assessed.
Yeah.
What are some of the specific motivational factors that showed this positive link with writing performance?
Well, self-efficacy, that belief in your ability to write successfully, consistently came up as a positive predictor. One study even found a particularly strong link between a student's confidence in their writing and the grades they received on their writing assignments.
Interesting.
Attitudes towards writing, whether they felt positively or negatively about it, also showed a positive connection with how well they wrote. Same goes for their self-concept as a writer, that sense of self-worth.
So if you feel good about your writing, you tend to write better.
It would seem so, yes.
It aligns with what we might think.
It does. Some other factors that showed a positive link were a student's belief in their ability to improve their writing over time, their autonomous motivation, writing because they genuinely enjoy it or see its value, and their mastery goals, writing to learn and to improve their understanding. Even just a general enjoyment of writing and a belief in one's own competence in writing were linked to better performance.
So it's not just about feeling confident, but it's also about finding the act of writing enjoyable and having that desire to continuously get better.
Exactly. Now, it's important to note that there were a few studies that didn't find a significant positive relationship or even found a negative one, but that was in very specific contexts.
Okay.
For example, one study found that positive attitudes were actually negatively related to performance on a copying task.
That's a bit quirky. If you have strong opinions about writing and its purpose, maybe you're less inclined to just copy down someone else's words perfectly.
That's a possible interpretation. The review highlights that this relationship between motivation and performance can be complex and might depend on the type of writing task. However, that overall picture is pretty clear. In most cases, higher motivation leads to better writing.
And what about when researchers looked at multiple factors together? Were there any that stood out as particularly strong predictors of writing performance, even when other motivational aspects were taken into account?
Yes. In studies that used more complex statistical models, self-efficacy and attitudes in digital contexts often uniquely predicted writing performance, even when the influence of all these other factors was accounted for.
That's really interesting, especially given how digital our world is. It suggested how confident and positive students feel about writing using technology might be really important in how well they write.
It does, yeah. And the review also brought up this emerging idea that it might be a two-way street. So it's not just that motivation influences writing, but success in writing can also boost a student's motivation. Feeling like you've done a good job can actually make you want to write more.
It can become like a positive cycle.
Yeah.
You're motivated, you write well, that success reinforces your motivation, and so on.
Yeah.
Okay, so motivation really, really matters.
Yeah.
Let's get to what teachers can do in the classroom to actually try to boost writing motivation. What did the research say?
This is the practical part, and the research offers a number of insights into teaching practices that can make a real difference.
I love it. Give us some concrete examples.
One key area is combining strategy instruction, which is teaching students specific techniques for planning, drafting, and revising their writing, with self-regulation strategies, which help them learn how to manage their own learning and writing process effectively. Research has shown that this combination can lead to increased confidence in their writing abilities.
So giving them both the how-to of writing and the how to manage myself while writing.
Yes.
Winning formula.
It really is. The self-regulated strategy development, or SRSD approach, along with fostering a belief that writing skills can improve with effort and practice, that's been consistently linked to better writing outcomes. And more comprehensive programs that blend that explicit strategy instruction with a process-oriented approach, where they go through multiple stages of drafting and revision, have been shown to really boost self-efficacy, especially for tasks like story writing.
So teaching those writing strategies and really getting them involved in that whole process,
Yes.
from brainstorming to final revision, that seems crucial.
It's really important.
What about the social aspect of writing in the classroom?
Yeah, that plays a role too.
Okay.
Research suggests that writing collaboratively with peers can actually increase their autonomous motivation. So that drive to write because they want to, not just because they have to. And even something as simple as having them write letters to adults has been shown to increase motivation, perhaps because it provides a sense of audience and purpose.
That makes sense. If students feel like their writing has a real audience.
A purpose beyond just like the teacher evaluating it,
Right.
that's a huge motivator.
Huge, yes. Other practices that showed positive impacts were incorporating creative writing and speaking activities to foster more positive attitudes towards writing and providing feedback on their writing, which can increase their self-efficacy by showing them areas for growth. Even using games that involve narrative texts can make writing more enjoyable and less like a chore.
Gamification in writing, that's a really interesting approach.
It is, yes.
You could explore that in
Totally.
your own teaching.
Absolutely. Even things like drama and role-playing related to story writing have been shown to improve confidence in the pre-writing stages, like brainstorming and planning.
Yeah.
And the review also highlighted that teachers who themselves use motivating strategies tend to create more motivated writers. And interestingly, avoiding those overly competitive environments around writing tasks can prevent a decrease in students' self-efficacy.
So it's about creating that supportive, engaging, and purposeful environment.
Yes. It sounds like there are a lot of different levers that teachers can pull to try to foster that intrinsic drive.
There are. However, the review also notes that some interventions, like simply having students exchange letters with peers or just engaging in general journal writing without clear goals, didn't always show the motivational benefits.
Right. So it's not just about any activity will automatically boost motivation.
Yeah.
It needs to be thoughtful.
Yeah, targeted, aligned with those motivational goals.
Exactly.
The review connected these findings back to Bruning and Horn's 4 key conditions for enhancing writing motivation. And those are fostering positive beliefs, setting authentic goals, providing a supportive context, and creating a pleasant emotional environment. All the effective teaching practices really fall under one or more of those conditions.
So it's about making them feel capable, giving them real reasons to write, supporting that skill development, and making the whole experience as positive as possible.
Exactly.
Our final area to explore is the impact of digital tools on writing motivation. What did the research reveal?
Overall, the trend is quite positive. Digital tools often seem to have a really beneficial effect on how students feel about writing.
That's good, given how much technology we use now.
Yeah.
What are some examples of digital tools that seem to be working?
Well, many students just report enjoying writing with word processors compared to traditional pen and paper.
Yeah.
The ease of editing and revising can be a real motivator. Blogs have been found to increase motivation in some students, although that effect wasn't universal. Collaborative writing on wikis has been shown to boost both their motivation and their positive attitudes, likely due to the shared ownership.
That collaborative aspect seems to be really key,
Yeah.
whether it's with peers face-to-face or online in that shared workspace.
Totally. Even things like automated SEO feedback systems might increase persistence in tackling writing problems, perhaps by giving them immediate and specific insights into areas for improvement. Game-based writing environments can spark what's called situational interest in writing, making it feel less like a formal assignment and more like a fun activity. And writing apps available on tablets have also been reported by students to increase motivation, although more rigorous research is needed in that area.
So it's not just about the novelty of the technology. It's about how it changes the writing experience.
Yeah, make it more interactive, collaborative, and rewarding.
Exactly.
And those web-based environments that incorporate multimedia, things like images and videos, have been shown to increase motivation, enjoyment, and even reduce anxiety around writing, which can be a big barrier for some.
Reducing anxiety is huge. If
Yes.
technology can help lower that emotional barrier, that's a significant benefit.
It is. But it's also worth noting that one program that combined explicit instruction and writing processes with digital tools didn't actually reduce students' writing apprehension. So it's not a guaranteed positive outcome just because you use technology.
Right.
The design and how it's implemented in the classroom really matter.
It's not about just throwing technology at the problem. It's about using it thoughtfully and in ways that support writing motivation. Well, this has been a really fascinating dive. We've covered a lot of ground. To summarize for you, we learned that writing motivation is a complex thing with all those different components, from their beliefs about their ability to the reasons they have for writing. We saw that girls tend to report higher levels of writing motivation than boys, a difference that might be linked to broader societal beliefs about gender.
Right.
The path of motivation as students move through the grades isn't straightforward. It really depends on the specific aspect of motivation. But we did find that a student's motivation strongly influences how well they write. And very encouragingly, there are various teaching methods and digital tools that hold promise for boosting that drive to write.
And as you heard, the review emphasized the importance of having those clear, consistent definitions when we're talking about motivation and research. There are still some areas that are understudied. We need more research, longitudinal research, to really understand how these factors develop over time.
So as you're reflecting on all of this information, maybe take a moment to think about your own experiences with learning or professional development in writing. What aspects of your own motivation were key for you? How might these findings apply to encouraging writing in the young people that you know, the students that you work with?
If you want to explore this further, you could look into Graham's Writer Within Community model, research specific teaching strategies like SRSD, or investigate those digital tools that are out there.
Ultimately, understanding the why behind writing can really help us improve the how. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep that curiosity burning.